I always thought the hardest part of coming out would be saying the words. That somehow, if I could just push them past my lips, if I could just let my truth breathe in the open air, everything after would fall into place. I was wrong. It wasn't the words that broke me. It was the silence that followed. I came out to my family when I was 17. We were sitting at the dinner table, the clink of silverware against plates filling the air. My hands were trembling as I set down my fork, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it. And then I said it. Simple, steady, clear. I'm gay. At first, no one reacted. My father kept chewing, his eyes fixed on his plate. My mother blinked, set down her glass of wine, and said nothing. My sister glanced at me, then at them, then quickly away. Finally, my father sighed. "We love you," he said, his tone flat, "but not like this." Those words, they burned. My mother nodded, not meeting my eyes. "It's just a phase," she muttered, as though trying to convince herself. And my sister? She didn't say anything. Not then. Not ever. I thought maybe time would soften them. That one day, they'd come around. But instead, the distance between us grew wider, colder, sharper. The first time I noticed the photos, it felt like a punch to the chest. It was Christmas, about a year later. I came home, trying to pretend everything was fine, trying to pretend I still belonged. And then I saw it, the big family portrait that used to hang in the hallway. Only I wasn't in it. I blinked, confused, my mind racing. Maybe they'd had a new photo taken? But no. I recognized the clothes. The same outfits, the same background, the same crooked smile my father always made when he tried to look serious. Except this time, there was no me. They had cut me out. I remember standing there for a long time, staring at the frame, my breath shallow, my vision blurring. I checked the albums next, flipping page after page. And each time, it was the same. Photos where I'd once stood had been trimmed, cropped, or replaced entirely. Vacations. Birthdays. Graduations. Every memory rewritten. Every trace of me, gone. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. They hadn't just turned their backs on me. They had rewritten their story as if I had never existed. That night, lying awake in my childhood room that suddenly felt like a stranger's, I realized the truth: I didn't have a family anymore. Not in the way that mattered. And as the years went by, the distance only grew. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. And eventually, I stopped trying. But that image, those photo frames, those albums stripped of me, never left my mind. Because there's a special kind of pain in realizing your family doesn't just reject who you are. They erase you entirely. When you lose your family, the first thing you notice is the silence. It's not just the absence of voices in the room. It's the silence in your phone, the silence on holidays, the silence when something wonderful, or terrible, happens and you have no one to call. At first, I filled that silence with work. I took the first job I could get after leaving home. A cramped cafe, the kind where the coffee tastes burnt and the customers complain no matter what you hand them. My shifts were long, my pay was short, but at least it was mine. My life. My independence. Still, nights were the hardest. I'd come home to a tiny apartment where the paint peeled off the walls and the heater rattled like it might give up at any second. I'd sit on my mattress on the floor and stare at the ceiling, wondering if maybe my family had been right, if maybe I didn't belong anywhere. But slowly, things started to change. I met people. Not the kind you're born with, but the kind you choose. The kind who see you exactly as you are and don't flinch. One of them was Alex, a coworker at the cafe. He noticed how quiet I was, how I flinched whenever someone mentioned family. One night, after closing, he handed me a mug of tea and said, "You've got that look. The one people wear when they're carrying something heavy." I laughed, awkward, but he didn't push. He just stayed. Over time, I found myself talking. About my parents. About the photos. About being erased. And instead of telling me it was just a phase, Alex said 4 words that changed everything. "Then we'll remember you." It sounds small, but to someone who's been erased, it meant everything. From there, my circle grew. Friends of friends. A community that lived in the cracks between families, people who had been cast aside, rejected, silenced. They taught me how to live without apology. They showed me that belonging doesn't come from blood, it comes from love. For the first time, I celebrated birthdays again. Not at stiff dining tables where silence spoke louder than words, but in cramped apartments filled with laughter, cheap wine, and off-key singing. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And slowly, the silence faded. Work got better too. I left the cafe, found a job at a small marketing firm. At first, I was just another intern fetching coffee. But I worked hard, and I listened, and soon people started noticing. Promotions came slowly, but they came. Every step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of myself my family had tried to erase. I won't pretend it was all smooth. There were nights I still cried, moments I still envied families who posted smiling holiday photos online. But little by little, I built something they could never take away. A life. A home. A family of my own making. And as the years passed, something remarkable happened. I started to feel free. My family had erased me from their pictures. But I had painted myself into a whole new world, one where I didn't need their approval. And then, the letter came. The letter that would change everything. It started with a letter. A thick, cream-colored envelope with my name printed in careful cursive, the kind of handwriting you don't see much anymore. At first, I thought it was junk mail, maybe some marketing scheme. But when I opened it, the words inside made my stomach flip. It was from a lawyer. A relative had passed away, my grandmother. Now, to most people, a grandmother is someone who bakes cookies and tells stories, someone whose house smells like lavender and old wood. But to me, she was a ghost. My parents had cut her off years before I was born. She'd always lived in the background of whispered arguments, the bad influence nobody ever talked about directly. And yet, here was her lawyer, informing me that not only had she remembered me, she had left me everything. The letter detailed it all, her estate, her savings, her properties, her investments. It was more than I could process. Numbers with so many zeros they didn't look real. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Why me? Why not my parents, or my sister, or anyone else? But then I saw the line written in her own hand at the bottom of the letter. For the one they tried to erase. I sat there, shaking, staring at those words until they blurred. She had known. Somehow, she had known what they'd done to me, how they had tried to write me out of existence. And instead of following their lead, she had chosen me. The days that followed felt surreal. Meetings with lawyers. Property tours. Bank accounts shifting into my name. Overnight, I went from scraping by in a tiny apartment to being one of the wealthiest people I knew. And then came the calls. Not from friends. Not from the family I had built for myself. From them. My parents. My sister. My cousins. Suddenly, they all remembered me. Suddenly, the silence broke. Hey, we've missed you. We should get together soon. Family is family, after all. I almost laughed when I heard those words. Family? The same people who had cut me out of photos, who had let me vanish from their lives without a second thought. Now they wanted a reunion. At first, I ignored them. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd give up. But they didn't. They pushed harder, insisting that Grandma's death was a chance to heal, to forgive, to come together again. But I knew better. This wasn't about healing. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about money. And as their messages piled up, as their sweet words dripped like honey laced with poison, a thought began to form in my mind. What if I went? What if I showed up, sat at their table, listened to their rehearsed apologies and their fake laughter? What if I let them believe, even for a moment, that they could have it all back? Because by then, I had already made a decision. The money wasn't mine to keep. I knew what I was going to do with it. And when they found out, oh, they would never recover. Years went by, and with them, my family's silence grew louder. Holidays passed without a phone call. Birthdays came and went without a single message. It was as if I had been erased from existence, a ghost who had once lived among them. But life has a strange way of turning. When I was 28, a lawyer reached out to me. At first, I thought it was a scam. Who writes a random email saying, "You've inherited an estate worth millions"? But it was real. My great-aunt Eleanor, my father's estranged sister, had passed away. She had never married, never had children, and apparently, she had been watching me from a distance. She knew what my family had done to me. She had seen the photographs where I was missing, the stories where I was left out. Somehow, she had known. And in her will, she left everything, to me. The mansion, the stocks, the land, the businesses. It wasn't just wealth, it was legacy. And overnight, I went from scraping by in a tiny apartment to holding the keys to an empire my family never even told me existed. When the news hit the papers, I wasn't surprised when the phone calls started. My parents, my siblings, even distant cousins who once avoided me at gatherings. They all reached out with the same sugary tone, dripping with fake warmth. "We've missed you. Family is everything, you know. We should have a reunion, start fresh." 5 years of silence, and now they wanted to reconnect? I laughed bitterly every time. But part of me, deep down, knew they wouldn't stop. Not until they got what they wanted. So I started planning. I knew they expected me to embrace them with open arms, to play the prodigal child who came back richer than ever. But I also knew their love was conditional. Always had been. Always would be. And if they thought they could buy their way back into my life with fake smiles and forced apologies, they were about to find out the truth. Because by the time they came knocking, I had already decided what to do with the fortune. And none of it included them. It didn't take long for the plan to surface. My sister was the first to suggest it. She sent a long email filled with emotional language, the kind that sounds heartfelt at first glance but falls apart the more you read it. "We want to make things right. We know we've made mistakes. Family is forever." And at the end, the pitch, a family reunion. Not just any reunion, an elaborate, once-in-a-lifetime event. They rented a banquet hall, hired a professional photographer, and even ordered a custom banner that read, "Welcome home." It was sickeningly ironic. The same people who had erased me from every photo now wanted me front and center in their staged production. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about healing. It was about money. They saw me as the gatekeeper to Eleanor's fortune, and this reunion was their ticket inside. When I walked into that banquet hall, all eyes turned to me. The silence was almost comical. I could see the shock in their faces, the clothes I wore, the confidence in my step, the undeniable fact that I had survived without them. My mother rushed forward first, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, we've missed you so much," she cried, pulling me into a hug that felt as stiff and rehearsed as a stage performance. Behind her, my father offered a smile, a tight, calculated grin that screamed, "Don't mess this up, we need them on our side." One by one, they lined up, offering apologies that all sounded the same. "We didn't mean to push you away. We just didn't know how to handle things. But we're family, and family forgives." I played along. I smiled. I shook hands. I let them believe I was buying into it. But the truth? Every word they spoke only solidified my decision. Because while they were clinking glasses and toasting to new beginnings, none of them knew that I had already signed away the entire fortune. Every penny. Every property. Every share of stock. Gone. All of it donated to charities, to LGBTQ+ youth shelters, to community programs, to causes Eleanor herself once supported. The mansion they imagined moving into? It was already being converted into a safe house. The bank accounts they hoped to help me manage? Already emptied into foundations. The empire they thought they'd inherit by manipulating me back into the fold? Out of their reach forever. As I sat there, surrounded by the same people who had once cut me out like a stain on their perfect family portrait, I realized something. This wasn't my reunion. It was my revenge. The reunion carried on like a bad play. Fake laughter. Forced conversations. Compliments so hollow they echoed. But I had been patient long enough. Toward the end of the evening, the photographer gathered everyone for a family photo. My relatives scrambled into position, eager to stand beside me, to immortalize the moment they believed marked my return. I stood in the center, silent, my smile sharp as glass. And just before the flash went off, I spoke. "You know," I said, my voice carrying across the hall, "it's funny how history repeats itself. Years ago, you erased me from every photograph. But tonight? This picture isn't going to matter either." The room went quiet. My mother blinked. My father frowned. Someone nervously laughed. I stepped forward, every eye on me. You've all spent tonight pretending. Pretending you care. Pretending this is about family. But let's be honest, it's about money. Eleanor's money. Gasps rippled through the room, but I didn't stop. You thought I'd come crawling back, fortune in hand, desperate for your approval. But the truth? That fortune doesn't exist anymore. Not for you. Every dollar, every estate, every piece of property, it's gone. Confusion exploded into panic. My brother shot up from his chair. What do you mean gone? I looked him dead in the eyes. I mean it's been donated. To people who actually need it. To kids who've been abandoned, like I was. To communities you've spent your whole lives ignoring. My father's face turned red, his voice trembling with rage. You gave it all away? Without consulting us? I laughed, sharp and bitter. Consult you? The same people who threw me away like I was nothing? Who cut me out of your lives and your memories because I didn't fit your picture of perfect? No. You lost the right to be consulted the moment you decided I didn't matter. My mother whispered, her face pale, but, we're family. I met her gaze, unflinching. No. You're relatives. Family shows up. Family loves without conditions. Family doesn't erase you because they're ashamed. You taught me that lesson, and I'm never forgetting it. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. The photographer, awkward and unsure, slowly lowered his camera. My relatives sat frozen, their dreams of wealth shattered in a single moment. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Because I wasn't the one erased anymore. They were.